Good evening and welcome once more to the Eclectic Radical. I'm Chris Richards, the Eclectic Radical, and my guest tonight is a citizen journalist from Florida, Mina, who isn't sharing more of her name for the same reasons you might expect any citizen journalist in Florida now not to want to share their full name, and I can't blame them. Sorry for the joke there, Mina. Go ahead. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm good. And yeah, I don't want to have to register with the state.
Right? Because yeah, if you're blogging in Florida, you have to register with the state to criticize the state government.
Yeah, that hasn't been passed as of now, but it's hard to know with them.
I just sort of see that passing for some reason. Call me an idiot. It just seems like that's the sort of thing every Republican in the state house thinks they'll benefit from when they're the governor.
Yeah, there's several things that you didn't like you think would not go through, and then suddenly they did, because I mean, DeSantis has like a stranglehold on the state house here.
Well, that's the sort of thing that I get is that there's a lot of serious desperation uh, because what's the word? What's the way I'm trying to put? They know that the actual popular support for their policies, even among their own voters, isn't as much as they pretend it is, and so they need to get as much passed as they possibly can before they're out of office, because once they start passing stuff, they know there's a good chance there's going to be backlash, but they don't care because it'll be passed by that point.
Yeah, and they've Florida's done a lot to kind of crush dissent over the past few years, and that kind of helped shield some of the backlash, in my opinion. Like doing the this was, I guess, 3 years ago now, so it's kind of gotten forgotten about. But the anti-riot law that they passed here in Florida, um,
Yeah, the anti-riot law. Yeah,
which was really just like an anti-protesting act.
pretty much.
Pardon me.
I said pretty much.
Yeah, and the way that Governor DeSantis has been very openly hostile towards his perceived enemies.
And which is anybody who isn't a Republican, I imagine, right now.
It's even within Republicans. It's anybody who speaks out or negatively about him at all. Um,
I just think it's funny to see Trump attacking him now, and DeSantis is the biggest potential rival for Trump when he got elected governor in the first place with that awful commercial licking Trump's shoes, basically.
yeah, like reading like Trump books to his kids, and
Yes,
I
we're
remember
going to
seeing
build
that.
the wall.
I remember thinking that was like satire, and it's like it wasn't. It kind of is though, but also
It is
not.
now.
Yeah,
It wasn't then. It is now.
yeah. He definitely got there on Trump's coattails.
Shifting in the wind.
Hmm.
It's just you can't even trust the Nazis to be loyal to the boss Nazi anymore.
No, God, I know Nazi groups have been popping up more and more in Florida, and it was, I think, I'm sure you're familiar with TPUSA,
Yes,
Charlie Kirk's little
yes.
Hitler Youth Organization. um,
It feels like it. Yes.
it does. Yeah, it's really funny how they go around to colleges and talk about how much college sucks. But outside of one of their events, there were a bunch of there's a group of Nazis, and they had like Nazi flags, and they had a flag that said, DeSantis country. And TPUSA were like, they're not associated with us, and some Republicans were like, that's Antifa pretending, there's creases in the flags, whatever, that kind of stuff they normally say. But what I thought was interesting is Ron DeSantis never said anything. Like,
Well, I
even if
mean,
you think they're actors, like, you should still say something, like your name's
well,
associated.
who's Ron DeSantis want to be? He wants to be Donald Trump. What did Donald Trump say when they said David Duke endorsed him? I don't know who that is.
It's hard to keep up with everything that Trump said friendly to, white
Well, I know
supremacists.
it's just so funny because back the first time that Trump was considering running for president, he was thinking about running with the Reform Party. And then he decided not to run for president because David Duke was associated with the Reform Party. He called David Duke out by name when he said he wasn't going to run. So for him to say, I don't know who that is,
Convenient.
that was a little suspicious, unless he just really is demented, which is possible.
Trump's so weird to me because he doesn't seem to have real convictions, I guess. Like, it's all just about his ego and whatever he wants. Like, sometimes I'm like, is he even a white supremacist, or is that just who he likes? Like, who he thinks will make
So
him.
his father was arrested at the big Klan rally in Madison Square Garden in the 1920s.
Fred Trump.
Yes, Fred Sr.
Yeah, they're just also, they all seem so narcissistic. I kind of wish these like rich guys would stop like being mean to their sons, because then they all give us problems.
There's more than just the being mean, though. The Nazi thing tends to run in families. I don't know if you've paid attention to what Trump's niece Mary has said about her uncle on TV or not.
Oh yeah, I think she has said a lot.
One of the things she said, though, was that her father was very racist too, and that was because it happened to people growing up in that household, because Fred impressed that on all his children.
That makes sense. Yeah, her dad wasn't he like the
he was the black sheep of the family.
Yeah.
He did help steal daddy's money. He wasn't that far out of the loop. He was in on the big tax scam. But yeah, no, he was the black sheep of the family who went to fly for an airline and ended up dying depressingly young, especially for rich people, of alcoholism.
Yeah.
And for a rich person to die of alcoholism, that's particularly unusual, because rich people have access to the best treatment, so that people don't even know most of the time that they almost died.
Yeah, I believe that. I've like also heard that really wealthy people, they do like MRIs like yearly and stuff like that.
People will be on the way that I once heard it put by a former co-host and associate was, when they talk about being on an IV, they mean they almost died, and if they were poor instead of rich, they would be dead.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I believe that the rich have so much more opportunity to afford expensive vices. So, somebody really had to be an alcoholic if they were wealthy and died of their alcoholism.
Yeah, sometimes especially when I hear about wealthy people that do things like that, it sounds almost like a passive suicide.
It feels that way sometimes, like people aren't happy even with all the things that should make them happy, and feel like they need to take these huge risks in order to feel normal.
Yeah. I don't know anything about Ron DeSantis's parents. I can think of, these people with horrible dads.
Yeah, no, I don't know anything about Ron DeSantis' family either. I would bet, just seeing how he treats his kids in the commercial at least, I don't think he was treated well as a child.
Probably not. He doesn't give the demeanor off like he was.
Yeah, no, he seems like he was raised a certain way, and everybody else is going to have to put up with the way he is because he was raised a certain way.
Yeah, he's very hostile, um, and not very, Trump had this, as hostile and rude and mean he could be. He was kind of funny in a way to a lot of people. Like, I don't think DeSantis has that. He's just kind of
Trump
mean.
Trump is hilarious. Trump is genuinely hilarious. If he weren't genuinely hilarious, he would not have won the presidency. It's the fact that he's genuinely hilarious that got him through more than
Yeah, I
anything
think
else.
that'll be Ron DeSantis's weakness when it comes to the presidential stage.
Yeah,
He's just,
he seems like humorless and lacking in charisma. Yeah.
he is, and he's very hostile to the media, which Trump was too, but he did that whole like fake news thing, kind of
Yeah.
like made a game of it. But um Ron DeSantis, he'll just kind of get combative with them and like for no reason.
I,
um
I know that if I lived in Florida and wanted to write about Ron DeSantis, I might have to register with the state.
yeah, in the not too distant future that very well could be the case. Um
So
Hopefully that doesn't come to pass, but
that's
apparently he has said he's against it, but I don't know. I never
that
trusted.
doesn't sound like something he'd be against for some reason.
No, he's very controlling with the media already. Like he
Yeah.
as I'm sure you've noticed, he only does interviews with Fox.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Yeah, he won't do interview. Well, and he did do an interview with someone else recently, but it was another company owned by Rupert Murdoch. I just don't remember the name.
Hopefully not the New York Post.
No, I think it's one based out of UK, and it wasn't the Wall Street Journal.
Probably.
Um, but anyway, so he only does interviews with people friendly to him, and even on Fox News, like he only will interview with the hosts that aren't very that won't ask hard questions, because some of the hosts they have like in the midday will be a little more
Yeah,
like a reporter.
he's probably really relieved that Shep Smith isn't with Fox anymore.
I doubt he would have talked to him.
I mean, Shep Smith isn't even really particularly liberal. He's just not a Nazi.
Really low bar there, huh?
You would think it seems to be really hard for a lot of people though. So you're in Florida, and I really have to know, is is the attack on everything that Ron DeSantis deems wokeness, or the don't say gay stuff worse? Because it seems like he's really trying to clamp down on everybody.
So the interesting part and actually kind of scary part of it is not many people's day-to-day lives have really changed all that much since he's been around.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's a very, I mean, obviously it's a very small group of people he's really
Mm-hmm.
going hard after right now. Like, I don't actually know a trans person personally in my own city. Like, granted, I do live in a small one and I know some in like the bigger city nearby, but as far as like in my own hometown, I don't even know one personally. And that just, and I think a lot of people don't, or maybe they know one or two trans people. And so a lot of people don't see the actual like impact of the things he's doing.
I
Um,
So I will say that well, you can see by my appearance that I do not necessarily conform to certain corporate standards of personal grooming.
mhm.
Because I do not conform to corporate standards of personal grooming, I've worked a lot of interesting jobs where they don't really care a lot about what you look like, because your job is to talk on the phone or something like that. So
Mm.
I've worked with a lot of marginalized people in general who those were the jobs they were stuck with.
That makes sense.
Because if you can't, those are the jobs that'll hire anybody and discriminate the least because they're mills. They're trying to churn through as many people as possible. They're going to
Mhm.
abuse everybody they hire anyway. So what do they care about discrimination?
Yeah, exactly. It's um
But
other than sorry, go ahead.
so I've probably known more trans people than the average ordinary straight guy. But at the same time, it's just because I've been living in a very specific section of society. Working class society is the best way to put it. Not college society. I know a lot of
Mhm.
people move in the college circles. There's nothing wrong with that. I think people should have an opportunity to get an education. And there's other circles too that I approve of even less. The rich people circles and the social stuff and some of the
Yeah.
political clubs out there that aren't so good. But I've in working class circles, you meet a lot of different kinds of people because every kind of person has to work for a living.
Yeah, they do.
And so I just think about it and it's like, well, maybe I've met more people of different kinds than folks going to college or folks working at a bank.
Quite possibly. I just, I come, I'm mostly in a small Christian conservative town, so
That'll do it.
um, that, of course, does it too. And I mean,
So,
of course,
fun
trans
fact,
people are still a rather small population, but even smaller in somewhere where I live.
Echo from RuPaul's Drag Race was a friend of my daughter-in-law before she hit it big.
Oh, very cool. There's
So, and that's a small Christian town
yeah,
in
we actually
Tennessee.
had we did actually have an LBGT bar here, and the police ran it off.
Of course they did.
Um, it was yeah, that was pretty tragic, and uh, someone from RuPaul's was going to perform there, but I don't remember which one. But I'm not very good with the name with names in general. How did somebody ask? How did that take place? I don't know. Are they talking about the
Well, it depends
bar being
on.
run off?
It's a good question. How did what take place?
Something like that happened in Fort Worth. What are you shutting down the so they didn't do it officially. They would basically stalk her and intimidate her, the woman who owned it. And they would there's so many laws that we don't know about because they're just not enforced and all this other stuff. So basically, they would try to find things wrong, maybe with the building code or little violations here and there, and basically would say they were going to punish her to the fullest extent they could to run her out of town.
If you own a bar, you're really vulnerable for all sorts of piddling things that are usually not enforced, but will suddenly be enforced if somebody gets mad at you the wrong way.
Yeah.
Like, there's health stuff that inspectors are usually like, well, fix that. And I won't write you up. But but not if somebody's pissed off.
Yeah,
There's licensing issues. It's really easy to screw with somebody's liquor license if you want to.
pretty much. And I don't know if you knew this, but I used to be a 911 dispatcher, and so I used to work rather close with police officers,
Oh
and
yeah.
they are 100%. They will punish you more if they just don't like you, or
Yeah, of
and like they would openly say these things around me because
course.
they perceive dispatchers as like one of them, I guess. And so they definitely will unfairly apply to a lot of people because there are just so many little laws and things out there.
There's there is a club, and they've had all sorts of other legal trouble too, but there's a club in Beaverton, Oregon, not too far from where I live, that can't get a liquor license because of ongoing disputes between them and the Beaverton cops. So instead of being a strip bar, they're a strip juice bar with a vegan menu.
Nice. We not allowed to have strip bars around here.
No, they have, well, and this is like on one hand, there are a lot of clubs all over the place around here, but on the
Hmm.
other hand, this one is in the wrong place, and so they don't have friendly neighbors,
Gotcha.
and so there's all sorts of stuff going on. It seems that suspiciously like police harassment, like when there's a gunfight for no reason in a bar, that sounds like an undercover cop and a dealer or something silly like that.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm cynical, but
I am at times. um,
I tend to blame cops for things that they may not be doing on purpose just because I'm cynical.
I mean, they blame us far more of things we don't do on purpose, so it's
Oh,
okay.
I know. Oh, I know.
Yeah. Like I said, when I was in dispatch, they always kind of paint out like you're gonna become more pro cop because like you see their job more up and close and personal and doing ride-alongs. And honestly, I just thought so much worse of them after that.
I guess they expect if you're working with cops, you'll end up sympathizing with cops.
No.
No,
uh,
I understand, which is kind of funny because I know cops do it. I know from people with experience that cops do end up sympathizing with criminals, but not in a healthy way. More in a everybody I know is either a cop or a criminal kind of way.
yeah. Um, it does depend amongst them,
Of
obviously.
course.
There was, this one cop I knew, he pretty much never arrested anybody because he just had such a and I knew him and I went to school with him and he honestly did have a big heart, but I am just like, dude, like you really should have chose a better path. But and then there are others that, this one cop came in and bragged about doing CPR on a dead guy once so he'd get out of working the death because whenever somebody would die, cops would have to go,
Yeah.
they'd have to do all this paperwork essentially,
Yes.
and it would take hours. They have to call the coroner, all that other stuff, and
Yes.
but
Paperwork and yeah, and
and they
family
found it,
notification forms and all sorts of stuff.
yeah, they found it very annoying. But so this cop, he did CPR on the guy, so EMS would come and pick him up because as soon as the guy ends up in the ambulance, it's their problem.
Hmm.
And he knew the guy was dead and like came in telling the story and was just like laughing about it. And apparently the guy's wife was there and she
Oh.
was thinking that the cop was saving him. And at one point he had pushed air out of him, and the wife thought he was starting to breathe again and got like excited, and he was just like telling the story laughing, and I was just like, Are you a psychopath?
Well, yeah, he probably is.
Probably. Like, he was pretty much all the bad cop tropes in
If,
one.
if I mean, if you're going to be a psychopath, the best places to be a psychopath are a CEO, a corporate CEO, a politician, or a cop.
And the bad thing is even the ones I found to be somewhat better people were all friends with him. So
And then that makes you question everybody who's friends with the psychopath.
yeah, like y'all know how awful he is. Like I know y'all are generally better, but like that does say something about
Is he
you.
brother of the badge, and the badge comes first?
Yeah, the brotherhood mentality. It was like that in Dispatch too. Like they try to like rope you into the brotherhood, I guess, of it all. Like I pretty much knew all the police in the region, and I think 3 times now I've been pulled over for speeding, and they just were like, "Ah, it's fine, it's you." And I'm just like, "Okay." Like, I mean, I'll take the free pass, but like, I'm not one of y'all.
Well, and that's really the thing, though, is that that's why they talk about sympathizing with cops, because they expect you to get sucked into the family of the badge, so to speak, and to identify with the cops because you're the dispatchers.
Yeah. Um, I guess because you work with them so much and they go into these dangerous situations, and which most time not really, but most time they were the danger, it felt like. But uh, really, all I saw was just how like awful they acted towards people. But
Well, the number one cause of death on duty for cops is traffic accidents,
yeah,
which means the most dangerous thing that cops do is drive police vehicles.
there was one officer on our, and in the I'm blanking the force, I guess. He crashed 3 vehicles while I was there, and I was there less than 3 years. He had totaled 3 vehicles.
Yeah, I believe it. That's the number one cause of on-duty death for cops is auto accidents. Now consider the fact that every auto accident that happens always has the potential for hurting somebody else and not just the cop. So it's not like they're getting shot and the only person getting hurt is the cop. They're careening down the street in an out of control piece of machinery that kills them and anybody else who gets in its way while it's killing them.
Oh yeah. When I first joined on, it was mandatory that we had to do 40 hours of ride-alongs,
Mm-hmm.
and that was some of the scariest times I've ever been in a vehicle. Like, oh my goodness. I don't care how much caging is in that vehicle. They drive us terrifying.
And I've seen the cop show episode where somebody gets shot. But where's the realistic cop show episode where somebody in the precinct gets taken out in an auto accident when they were supposed to be on the job?
I mean, yeah. I know every crash we had that involved a cop and then a civilian, it was always the cop's fault. Like, I don't think there was a single time I was working there, it was the civilian's fault.
But of course, because it was the cops, it was always the civilians' fault.
Yeah. And I guess segue back to our lovely state government in
Yeah.
their new bill about the Florida military, I call it. They're adding a police force to it. um for some reason. I guess like a military police
This is that
type thing.
Florida Guard business, yes?
Yes, the Florida State Guard, the civilian responder hurricane force, I guess, even though like they want military personnel and, airplanes and boats and stuff,
So how is
for
this going to be
hurricanes.
different from the Florida National Guard?
Um,
Or are they planning to fire the Florida National Guard so the state guard can have their jobs?
no, the Florida National Guard is gonna stick around. The only difference is this is one that DeSantis is in charge of.
Yeah, with no federal authority. That's convenient.
Yeah, and it's like when he
I mean,
announced the Florida Guard, he said it was about vaccine mandates.
so this raises the question: what other political figures in history have wanted their own military forces in addition to whatever forces the state already had?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, stormtroopers comes from Hitler having a paramilitary arm of his political party, and the SS was technically part of the Nazi party and not part of the German government, but they were incorporated into the German state, and the SS had their own private army at the end of World War II.
Wow.
And this was just so that they could duplicate an army for the party, because, if the actual army changed sides, they would need their own army, right?
Yeah, it's definitely made me skeptical. Like, yeah, why would you want your own your own military? Like, that's insane. And instead of like realistically what you would do if it was really about, because one of the other things that they claimed was it was about that the Florida National Guard didn't have enough people to help with the hurricane relief effort. So I'm like, why wouldn't you try to boost up National Guard recruitment instead of like starting your own military? Like, what?
Well, because this is just a guess. I'm not actually associating DeSantis with Marjorie Taylor Greene directly in any way. I'm not saying they're emailing or there's some secret conspiracy. This is just a general observation. If you were actually serious about the secession rhetoric that goes around your political party, it might be convenient to have a military that didn't answer to the federal government if you plan to secede.
Yeah, like that's how it feels. Like, I know it's, to most people it sounds paranoid, but like when you see how the GOP is talking and everything, and then, the big man in the GOP is literally making his own military, you are like, what? And
Yep.
it's in the bill going through right now, yeah, they're asking for funding to go up from 10 million to 100 million. Basically they added language in it so that, the governor has more single authority over the military, because that's another thing that DeSantis is really big on, is trying to consolidate as much power into just him.
So when I talk about it being about him wanting his own military, it really is, in a certain sense, at least for as long as he's governor, his own military.
Yeah, like in the bill, they added language that says the division of the State Guard is created within the Department of Military Affairs and shall be headed by a director who shall be appointed by and serve at the pleasure of the governor.
Yeah.
Subject confirmation by the Senate, which, they'll just confirm whoever he wants. And I thought it was also interesting in the bill because, the Florida Guard was something back in like the 40s or something. I think like mostly predating the National Guard, back when states had like more of their own state guards.
Yes, the state militia back in the day.
Yeah. And originally, whoever ran the Florida Guard was called I'm probably going to butcher this word, the adjutant.
Adjutant, yes.
The adjutant general.
Adjutant.
And
yep.
They took out adjutant general, they crossed it all out and changed it to director. And I don't know if that's to make it less military sounding or if it's just make it sound less because general sounds higher than governor.
Yeah. Yeah, director sounds like you're directing something for the governor.
Yeah, and I literally think they might have changed it to that so that it doesn't sound as higher authority. And
No, I
they
can definitely see that.
and there was a part of the the law on the Florida State Guard that said the Florida State Guard may be activated only to preserve public peace, execute laws of the state, enhance domestic security, regular stuff like that. They crossed out the part that says only and then added to protect and defend the people of Florida from threats to public safety and to augment any existing state or local agency, which is just incredibly vague.
Which basically says they can turn out the Florida Guard in militarized force to help a cop shut down a drag show.
Exactly. I was like, augment an existing state or local agency. I'm
That
like, that is
means
the vaguest thing.
everything from a local police force to a full military response to an enemy of the governor who didn't show up for his state tax audit.
Exactly. It's insane. I'm like, oh my gosh, y'all are taking out the language that says, like only do this in dire circumstance. And, right after that, of course, there's like a whole add in about having a specialized unit, which is pretty much just cops. Yeah, literally says must meet requirements and be certified as law enforcement officers, are vested with the authority to bear arms, detect, apprehend, and make arrest while activated. Awesome.
Yeah, so this is also sort of a violation of posse comitatus if they're both military and cops. I guess it's because they're not federal cops that it's okay.
I guess I don't know. And they also there was in the law it said the Florida State Guard is created as authorized under federal law for use exclusively within the state, activated only by the governor under specific limitations created in this section. And they crossed out the part that said under the specific limitations created by this section.
Now, this is a good point that Connor is making here. Specialized unit sounds like a secret police.
It could be. There's not a lot about it.
I hadn't thought about this, but Connor brought it to my attention from the way he said that. They called the SS units that went around behind the Nazi German army on the Eastern Front and shot communists and Jewish people and anybody else the military didn't like the look of, special units. That is not a cheerful thought.
No.
Specialized unit kind of echoes Nazi death squad language.
It really does. It's because I'm looking at the bill right now. Like I said, that this hasn't been passed yet, so putting that caveat in there. But it says the director shall organize director, not general, shall organize a specialized unit within the Florida State Guard, which shall be considered a criminal justice agency while activated. In addition to requirements set forth in paragraph 5C, all members of the specialized unit, and then must be certified as LEO and stuff like that. So it doesn't even, like, it's so vague. Like, this whole thing's very vague.
Yeah, and yes, the term specialized unit is uncomfortable language, especially when you've got laws criminalizing special classes of people.
Yeah, and I know this one's the one getting attention right now. The law that's going through the state house right now, where they can like parents that don't have custody of kids can legally kidnap. their
Yes, you can
kids.
legally kidnap your kid and bring him to Florida and get asylum if you say that your other spouse, your ex, was trying to turn your kid gay or trans.
Yeah, and even further in that bill, it doesn't even have to be necessarily the kid. If the other parent is trans, or if they have a sibling that's trans, they can also do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's and that's insane. But one last thing I wanted to say about the the Florida military is it is, I guess, a smaller thing, but I feel like it says something. The motto of it is "Let us alone," which
Nothing
sounds
secessionist there.
yeah, which honestly sounds like bad English to me. Let us alone. But anyways, it has like Civil War origins.
The correct English would be "let us be."
Yeah. And that's the official Florida Guard motto, "Let us alone." In fact, a few months ago, when gas stoves were getting banned, and DeSantis decided to make that a little cultural talking point or whatever. He shared a picture of the gas stove and said, "Let us alone," and I was like,
Well,
"That has such racist undertones."
why isn't he willing to let people alone?
He's about freedom. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, freedom for certain kinds of people, apparently, but not, other kinds of people.
What about the Seminoles? Will Florida leave the Seminoles alone?
Yeah.
No. uh, Funny
Florida
you mentioned
State
that.
won't even change their mascot. Who are you kidding?
No, funny thing about that too is, well, it's not funny, but ironically funny, I guess. The Florida State University is one of the colleges that DeSantis is going after, and there's a new bill in Congress right now specifically going after college education. That's really just quite sinister to me, and Florida State University is part of the bill too. Um, I don't know if you heard a lot of what happened in New College in Florida.
I
Um,
did. DeSantis basically took a progressive, forward-minded school and said, "You shall submit."
yeah, he basically replaced most of the board members, so they would have a mostly conservative board, and one of them being Chris Rufo.
He's a horrible person. This is the
Yeah,
person who said, "Let's lie and say that trans people are groomers because it'll make folks side with us and not them because grooming is bad."
and let's make critical race theory a panic, and literally detailed on Twitter his plans
Yeah.
of of propagandizing critical race theory. And I mean, got it to the point where it even made the law in Florida, the Don't Stop Woke Act or whatever.
This is true. The 1% that we should be worried about are all millionaires and billionaires.
Yeah, and Ron's pretty cozy up to them too. This is a very lesser known thing about DeSantis, because especially it only affects Floridians for one, and two, a lot of Floridians don't even know this. But you know, in Florida, there's pretty much a monopoly on the on power here, energy,
Yes.
and there's only three big businesses that pretty much have majority of the power or the majority of the power here is Duke Energy, Florida Power, and the third one is, I think, the Tampa Electric Company. I don't know. That's the smallest of the big three, but the big two are Duke and Florida Power.
Duke
And
has a history of corruption, don't they?
probably the compared to Florida Power here, I think they look very sanctimonious. No.
Well, I seem to remember a big scandal with Duke Energy giving a whole bunch of money to people in Congress.
I'm sure that's true. Florida Power is doing that in Florida, and they and of course the transaction can't be directly confirmed because it's gone through dark avenues, but pretty much they gave the DeSantis campaign $300,000,
Of course.
and they actually controlled a media outlet in Florida too.
And by comparison, just so people know the amount of graft we're talking about, Katie Porter only took about $65,000 from various pro-Israel lobbies to meet with Netanyahu. So what does $300,000 get for Duke Energy from Ron DeSantis?
Florida Power, but yeah, I don't know. They have an immense amount of power in Florida. Pun not intended. Did Florida Power do a bunch of illegal shutoffs? I don't know. They probably did though.
Most utility companies have done a bunch of illegal shutoffs at some point.
And what's so crazy too about the DeSantis being cozy with the energy companies. I don't know about like how other states work with their utilities, but in Florida we have something called a Public Service Commission. I don't know if other states have something similar. But basically it's a committee, and it used to be democratically elected. And they are a panel of like 5 people. And pretty much when utility companies in Florida want to raise prices or do certain things, it has to be approved by the Public Service Commission. It's a way for checks and balances between the people and the utilities because it's considered essential. And Ron DeSantis, whenever he came in, he pretty much ham-fisted a bill through Congress that would remove the people that were there. And he put in a bunch of pro-energy, pro-Florida Power and Light people in the Public Service Commission. And they have approved like every price hike that they want. And it's so the power bills have gone up like crazy in Florida, and it's insane how many people don't realize that DeSantis is very directly at fault.
A better DeSantis sounds like Manchin. A better example is DeSantis is Jim Justice if he was never a Democrat.
How is Ron going to pay for this new military now that he has added $1.5 billion?
Yeah, that's a good one. Let me bring that one back up.
And the bonds now being Florida's problem.
Yes.
I have no idea. I don't. The $100 million budget, I don't think has been quite approved by the Appropriations Committee. So I don't know.
He's probably going to try to get the federal government. The irony is he's probably going to get the federal government to subsidize it, underpaying for cops in Florida.
Probably.
And the federal government will end up signing some bill that somewhere in the margin says, yeah, and we're giving so much money to the Florida State Guard.
Yeah, yeah, probably.
That's just how, and this is the one thing that almost more than anything makes me wonder how serious they really are about the secession, which is 4 states, California, Texas, New York, and Florida, pay taxes for the rest of the country almost.
Oh yeah, a lot of those red states are getting propped up by the other
Not
ones.
just red states. I mean, yeah. I want to be fair here. Oregon, because it's a mostly rural state, and there's like 3 counties here around Portland where all the people live. Oregon is on this list of states that depends heavily on federal money because of farm subsidies in farm country here. This is a big agricultural state. There's other stuff they depend on federal money for. Oregon's state public services are actually really good. And most of that is how they spend their federal money for things like Medicaid. So there are states that do serious draws on the public teat, if you like, who aren't red states.
Yeah, of course.
Arizona, Colorado.
I think they're about to cut a bunch of Medicare in Florida. That's probably how they will pay for the army here.
Probably.
um, Also, a lesser known fact, I guess, probably because it mostly affects poor people, but Florida had knocked trans people off of getting any sort of gender affirming treatment off
Yes,
Medicaid months
I
ago.
remember that. And it hasn't been covered as heavily as it should have been, I don't think.
I agree. Yeah, that happened months ago, and like I said, it's that's mostly going to affect poor people. So naturally, I don't think it got
Well,
the attention it should have.
Medicaid always affects poor people because poor people are the people who use Medicaid.
Yeah, and so I don't know how many people he's already forced to detransition. It's kind of
I
sick to
know
think
that
about.
that's supposed to happen. His law pretty much demands it.
Yes, model employee. If somebody was getting their hormones through Medicaid, it's no longer covered. And if they can't afford it, they could very easily be forced to transition back.
Yeah, if you're in transition, you're forced to detransition because they're not going to pay for it. If you can't find someone else to pay for it, tough.
Yep.
Plus, depending on how the cops feel on a given day, the way the Florida drag ban is written, technically speaking, that someone the cops decided was a man could be arrested for being themselves in front of the 7-Eleven if there are kids playing video games at the 7-Eleven.
Oh yeah, there's I don't think people realize like how much this like okay, let's say you're totally selfish, you don't care about trans people. Like these laws are gonna affect you too eventually, just so you know.
So the one secret that everybody should know right now against trans hating bigots is that they're really terrible at telling trans women from women assigned female at birth.
Oh yeah.
There's a Brazilian MMA star who one of the big conservative accounts was calling out, "Oh look, this person is beating up women." Yeah, she was assigned female at birth. Didn't you know?
You can always tell.
Yeah, but well, I mean, she is physically powerful. And they are making the assumption that only people assigned male at birth can possibly be physically powerful.
Oh yeah, it's so many layers of bigotry. uh I've I was born female, but I've been accused on Twitter quite a few times of that they can tell that I'm trans.
People can
And
always tell something about someone if they're bigots. There's always some way that they know that someone should be targeted for something.
it's just so silly. Like one, who cares?
I have not. Have you seen Matt Walsh throw a spear? No, I haven't.
I've been
Um,
avoided that cursed What is a Woman movie.
I'm my feeling my feelings about Matt Walsh are not suitable for the air, and I say that having sworn on my show and said some fairly politically radical things on my show. I will not share what I think should happen to Matt Walsh on the air.
He's like, and I know that he kind of gets like a hatred. Like I know he gets a boner for like the hate he gets, but I just think he's probably like there's very few people I consider probably intrinsically evil, but I think he might be one.
Yeah, no, he definitely might be.
I mean, I saw the other day that like his wife on Twitter puts the, talks about like the pets hating him, and I'm like, yeah,
I believe
psychopath,
it.
sociopath, whatever. I'm
Does
like,
he
yeah,
have children?
he has like 6 children. I don't know. He just had twins, and I'm just like, God, please quit
Isn't that
procreating.
terrifying?
It is. I feel so bad for them. God.
I mean, that's what really bothers me is that some of these terrible people who have kids, and you just know, because this is what I was saying before about the Nazi thing running in families, is that Nazis want their kids to be Nazis too. Nazis are upset when their kids reject the idea of being Nazis. It bothers them.
Yeah.
What Ron DeSantis and other Republicans who are talking about, parents' rights in education are doing is they're giving Nazi parents the power to make sure their kids become Nazis if they want them to.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And these parental rights movement, especially, yeah, it's become very, very big in Florida.
Yeah.
This might be tinfoil hat time, but I also, I think it's very I think it's very intentional to try to delegitimize public school. Because they all want charter and stuff.
It's even beyond that. They even want to delegitimize the idea of school, because everybody who's talking about all of these other issues about we want to protect the kids, what they're not telling you is the reason they want to protect the kids is they want child labor as soon as possible.
Yeah, didn't Sarah Sanders just roll back child labor stuff?
16-year-olds can now get full-time jobs in Arkansas after she signed the most recent bill.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad capitalism's really working out.
Capitalism is working out so well that there's a shortage of workers, and at the same time nobody wants to work.
Yep, we're all lazy and just don't want to go to work.
We can't hire for these jobs. Well, what are you paying for those jobs?
Yeah, there's so many contradicting movements going on all at once. It's like I don't know, like they gotta know something's gonna give eventually.
And let's also not change the fact that there are people in the medical profession so traumatized by the COVID pandemic that they don't ever want to work in the medical profession again.
Oh, I believe that.
That's all those people off the job market who are not easily replaced.
Yeah, and of course, a lot of things contributed to the worker shortage now. One being, people just died.
Yeah.
Companies forced a lot of people into early retirement because they were like, well, we need to shrink the workforce. And you know what? People didn't come back. They were like, no, you forced me into retirement. Wasn't the APSP off? What is the APSP office raid? APRP. Oh, AARP. I do not know about that.
Where are we? What am I missing?
African People's Socialist Party.
Oh yes. Oh, Uhuru. That was federal. That was federal. That was the FBI accusing the Uhuru movement, the African People's Socialist Party, of being Russian spies.
Ah, yeah, I did not
Yeah,
know about
that
that
was
one.
federal and not state. I do believe that happened in Florida, but that was a federal bust.
I definitely know, like, I mean, obviously Red Scare never went away, but it's definitely been amped up lately.
And it's just so hilarious because, Russia's not socialist.
I know. I wish people would stop pretending they were.
The people who are doing the people who are the Americans who are working for RT right now are mostly the most reactionary people on the so-called left. It's disappointing.
I think, like, people have, I hate to say revisionist, but I wouldn't call it that. People have, like, this kind of, like, idealized view of Russia, like this that yearning for a Soviet country, and that's the only one they can hold on to. So they act like that's what's going on now there. I don't know.
Cuba's so much closer and more authentic.
Hmm?
Cuba's so much closer than Russia and more authentically socialist.
Yeah, but they're brown, so.
Well, there is that. There is that.
Yeah, Cuba likes to run off all the right wingers and make them come here. It's great.
Well, it's probably better in Cuba without them.
Probably. Yeah,
Venezuela. Venezuela did the same thing after the banking scandal not long before Hugo Chavez died. All the bankers that he was going to arrest fled to America.
That makes sense. I have a friend who's, his parents or grandparents, I don't remember which, emigrated here from Cuba, and he thinks very ill of Castro and Cuba and all that. And one day I was talking to him, I was like, what did your parents do?" He was like, "Oh, they owned a farm," and I was like, "Ah."
Sugar farm.
So.
Sugar plantation. So you're saying that you don't like Castro because you took your parents' slaves away.
Yeah, and they're very model employee, knew it every time. Yeah, it really is true. Like, so the one close Cuban friend I have, yeah. One day he was finally like, "Yeah, they owned a farm." I was like, "Oh no." So,
Well, it's like
it's
and obviously this is in no way a reflection on any of the victims of a senseless crime. But I mean, it's a small world. One of the parents of one of the victims at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School is a guy who left Venezuela because of the banking scandal. I'm going to flee to the United States where they are capitalists who will protect me. Yeah, but they won't protect kids at school from guns. They do that in other countries.
We'll just arm the teachers here, okay?
Because a crossfire, that's going to help the kids. And though maybe, I hate to say it, after the absolute total fiasco with none of the cops in Texas being willing to go into the high school, you really have to wonder if arming teachers isn't better than arming cops, except they'll arm the worst teachers at the worst schools.
They back when I was, in dispatch, they were starting that armed teacher program. I don't remember what it was called at the time, Guardian Project, I think.
Yeah.
And the whole shtick with it was nobody could know who the armed teachers were, but I happen to know because I was in dispatch, and it was not the best teachers.
Well, the concern that I always have when I start to think about it too much is okay, I understand what teachers are supposed to be like. I also understand that the reality is that there are people teaching in our school system who shouldn't be teaching. That's an inescapable fact.
Especially now.
Harming teachers is going to end up with teachers shooting kids.
Yeah. Um, Definitely. And, you know, there's obviously a nationwide teacher shortage, but it's actually quite a bit worse in Florida. And I don't know if I can't remember if this made national news or not, but one of the things Florida decided to do was let veterans become teachers.
Yeah.
And not just veterans, but their spouses. I'm like, so you want to arm veterans and put them in classrooms?
I suppose this requires me to closely vet the veterans. Are they at least communists, so we know that they're somewhat trustworthy?
I doubt it. uh, I don't. I honestly don't think the veteran thing was very successful. Like, I don't think a lot of them actually
Right.
applied because, I mean, being a teacher sucks.
Yeah, no. I know there was the thing, one of the states, I think it was Ohio, Indiana, someplace like that, had the thing where they tried to make cops teachers. And I just have the image when I picture that of cops not being able to actually deal with classrooms for any serious length of time. And can't imagine them wanting to do it a second day.
Well, God, cops in schools are already kind of a bad mix. I mean, ever since they started putting those resource officers in schools, like the arrest rates of juveniles like
No.
shot through the roof, and
Yeah, no, you don't need cops arresting kids. That's just
no,
and that's really
I
the
know.
question. When you have the cop coming in to teach the class because he's a cop, is he a cop or is he a teacher? Is he going to arrest students?
I know a lot of, people that are ex cops or ex veterans or whatever. That's kind of their identity first.
And
And
and the word for this, the most terrifying and hilarious thing I've ever imagined, the word for this, my friends, is absurd. The idea of cops as teachers is absurd.
yeah. uh, I don't even think they can get cops to. I think they're having a police shortage here
Of
too.
course, everybody claims to be having a police shortage. Here, the question is though, are they really having police shortages? Because what I hear is that people are saying we're having a hard time recruiting cops as part of the usual scam to say cops are overworked and underpaid. We need to pay more cops or we're going to have a recruiting problem. Except now they're blaming it on defunded the police. Only no one actually defunded the police anywhere.
Yeah, all that defunding that didn't happen. That yeah, it's like God,
It's like
they're
the
blaming.
lockdown. It's like the lockdowns that never happened. The
Oh yeah.
police defunding that never happened. It's the same grievance myth, just different targets.
Oh, I get especially annoyed when I hear about that in like that kind of griping about lockdowns in Florida because like they especially didn't happen in Florida. um,
Especially Florida is the place where Ron DeSantis opened up the beaches and caused a new outbreak.
yeah, and I've tried to explain to people like no, his policies literally killed people, and like there's quantifiable proof of that. I mean, Republicans
He,
died at a higher
he
rate.
fired somebody for blowing the whistle on him.
Oh yeah, it was that woman that ran against Matt Gaetz in this past election.
Yes.
I can't remember her name, but yeah, she whistle blew on the COVID numbers being
And I'm
underreported.
embarrassed because she follows me on Twitter and I can't remember her name. which
It's kind of
makes
like a
me feel
generic
guilty.
name.
It makes me feel with Rebecca something.
Yeah, Rebecca sounds right, but it's like a it was like a more Rebecca Jones. Okay, that's what I was
Yeah,
getting.
that's it. That's it. See, and you're right. Generic. You can't get more generic than Jones.
I knew it was like a very common name, so I was like, it's something.
But no, I feel guilty. I feel guilty when I can't remember the names of people who follow me.
I mean, you have like what 27,000 followers, like.
Yes, but I mean, I should be able to remember the people
I
who
think you're a
follow.
little hard on yourself with that one. Model. What are the biggest? Who are the biggest forces on the left in Florida? Nobody.
Yeah. So, like the Florida Green Party is 3 people who meet for coffee. I exaggerate, but it's not, the left is not super organized. There's a fair number of Marxist academics floating around various schools who sort of keep in touch with each other, and some students who keep in touch with professors and things like that. But and hey, the FBI clearly thinks that the African People's Socialist Party is a problem, but I've never heard that they were a threat to Ron DeSantis yet.
I've never even heard of them. So, and I try to stay fairly active in politics. I guess I mean, we got Maxwell Frost in the House of Representatives, but even he's turning more Democrat by the day, it feels. But
Yeah, a nice liberal Jewish lady couldn't beat Debbie Wasserman Schultz in what's actually a fairly progressive district because of the corruption and the way Debbie Wasserman Schultz runs that district.
yeah, are you saying Representative Maxwell isn't just that? It seems fairly left. He's on the DSA group, I
Yeah,
guess.
but I mean, it always comes with the caveat. Well, I mean, how left can he be if the Democratic Party let him get nominated and elected?
Yeah, like his first day in Congress, he was, chumming up Nancy Pelosi like big time, and I feel like,
That always happens, doesn't it?
yeah, and in the past year, he used to be a very vocal in support of Palestine, but that magically disappeared in the past year.
Well, hey, I mean, Katie Porter was showing the map of Palestine to the Israeli ambassador a few years ago, and now she's meeting with Netanyahu.
Oh, I know, and Nestle Yahoo's like a straight up fascist.
Yeah, he's very, very scary. And the really scary thing is that the people who beat him and replaced him, Naftali Bennett's crowd, were even more fascist than Netanyahu. And Netanyahu's solution to being beaten by other fascists was to become more of a fascist.
I mean, if you're already a fascist, I guess you might as well.
It's like, nobody's going to be more fascist than me. I will run to the right of the folks who beat me.
I kind of feel like that's happening a little bit at like the Daily Wire. They're all just like, what's like the worst thing I can say about trans people? And like literally Michael Knowles is just like eradication. It's like,
all I can say is that conservatives are way too honest about what they think, and then they expect people not to take them seriously. It's like, I remember how offended so many so-called conservative intellectuals were when there was this huge backlash to Kevin Williamson saying, yeah, we should hang women who have abortions. And people were pissed about the backlash. It was like, well, he didn't mean that literally. Only now you've got states that are considering capital punishment against women who have abortions.
I was yeah, exactly. Like these,
So
I don't think people realize these things come kind of slowly. It's
yeah,
like they keep pushing
when
the envelope.
when somebody like Kevin Williamson says something like that, and you say, you didn't take him seriously, did you? It doesn't matter whether I took him seriously or not. It matters whether the people in Iowa and Florida took him seriously or not. It
Yeah,
matters whether
and
the state legislature in Wyoming took him seriously or not.
and that's the other thing that, bothers me is, like the whole eradication of transgenderism, not transgender people, but like, which is a stupid distinction because transgender people aren't separate from transgenderism. But
Well, there's
anyways,
no such thing as transgenderism. It is a made up ideology to justify bigotry.
exactly. But yeah, well, what also bothers me is like if I was saying something that gave the impression that I wanted genocide, like that would really bother me, and I would like go to great lengths to be like, no, 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 I need to change, like I need to like change deeply. But no, they just like double down. Like obviously, it doesn't
Yeah.
bother them that much.
Well, no. We didn't mean anything about eradicating people. We meant eradicating an ideology. Except the ideology doesn't exist. It's code for people. We know what you mean. It's not a very subtle dog whistle.
Well, and that's what they've been doing for years. Is and they've done this with a
They've
lot of things. Is they just keep pushing it more and more and more until eventually they're just outright murdering them, and everyone's like, oh well, I guess that was
yeah.
the logical next step.
It's just gross because you have people talking, you have the bathroom bills and the reactions to bathroom bills and this whole stupid, well, how important are bathrooms anyway? It's like, well, do you have to go? Because the more you have to go, the more important they are. I mean,
Even back then, like I was like, it's not about the bathrooms, like we all
no.
know.
But they want to say, well, it's about bathrooms and pronouns. It's like, no, it's about a law that makes it illegal for people to exist. Well, the law doesn't show me where the law says it's illegal for people to exist. Well, what do you think a drag ban that's so loose that it means whatever a cop wants it to mean is, you fool? Are you
Yeah,
really
and
that stupid? Or do you
they
really just think that well of cops?
well they act like these bills are just vague because they're just vague. Like, no, they're purposely vague, and it's for plausible deniability.
Yeah.
I mean the don't say gay bills. I mean it was the same thing. I read it. It's only like 3 pages long. I mean anybody can read it, and it doesn't say outright like you're not allowed to say gay, but it does say don't teach to kindergarten to third graders materials related to sexual orientation or gender identity, and that's vague. And it was vague to the point that certain school districts were telling teachers, like, if they're gay, like, hey, don't mention that to kids. And then the lawmakers were like, well, they're misinterpreting that. And it's like, okay, well, then do something about it. If people are misinterpreting your
Clarify it.
bill, yeah. But no, they don't. Because it's fine with them. And they in Florida, it's they were lying when they said it's about the kids. It's not about the kids, especially with the law going through the state house right now, specifically attacking colleges.
It's about the ego of adults. It's about the ego of people in power, especially religious people in power, and their belief that they're responsible for other people's morality.
Well, Chris Rufo down in New College just I think nixed their DEI staff, which I have mixed feelings on DEI and stuff. Not like diversity, but just the whole like corporate mixture of it. But that aside, that's obviously used for a lot of corporate hand washing. But Bruce Rufo just hates it because he's a white supremacist. But
Oh
you
yeah.
know,
Well, and the thing to remember is that they always use the excuse of, well, this is corporate, well, that is corporate, well, this is corporate. It's like corporations aren't pro-gay or pro-black. Corporations
no.
just want to be seen publicly as decent. If you succeed in changing the bar of decency so that they don't care, they won't care. And for you to blame the corporations for it is just part of your effort to make them care less.
Yeah, it's like this. Because Ron DeSantis done this too. Is attack ESG a lot, environmental social governance.
Sure.
People might not know, it's basically this ranking done by random private companies of other businesses on how how environmentally friendly they are, socially conscious. I forgot what governance means. I think that has to do with like your like how you treat your employees. But
My guess, and I could be wrong, the two things that come to mind is either do you listen to your ethical board or do you ignore them?
yeah, it's something like that. And ESG essentially is just feel good capitalism, but
Yeah.
Ron DeSantis is, attacking it because, woke or whatever. And I'm
Like,
just like, dude, like, it's not woke. It's just businesses wanting to look good
like
because money.
Ben and Jerry's, which made a bunch of changes to look good because their image was being progressive. When Ben
Hmm.
and Jerry's was sold to Unilever, Unilever just stopped listening to the group that had been appointed to make sure everything they did was socially conscious. They didn't fire them right away, but they didn't listen to them or pay any attention to anything they said.
Yeah, that a lot of that stuff is such a farce anyway. Um, the ESG type stuff they'll do, or DEI or whatever else. It's all just to
Yeah,
make them look good, and
of course.
so that's my I guess my gripes about it. But
Like Raytheon getting an Employer of the Year award from the Human Rights Coalition.
what Raytheon?
Yes, because they're such an LGBTQ plus friendly employer, allegedly.
Oh, that's nice. Gay bombs.
I mean, but that's the thing is that it's you by naming yourself the Human Rights Coalition, you're taking a certain moral authority, and then when you use that moral authority to give Raytheon an award, it does end up looking wrong.
It a lot of stuff that's supposed to be good is often uh, it makes me think of like Team Seas, that group that cleans up plastic out of the ocean or whatever.
Yeah,
And
I know who you
like one of
mean.
yeah, it's done with like Mr. Beast, I think, and like one of the biggest funders of it is Coca-Cola, who's
Well, they
single-handedly
better be funding it. It's their plastic.
exactly, but it's to show that yeah, they care.
This is true. You don't say anything about Raytheon in Lee, Massachusetts. I know that's true because I come from Southern California, and before they went out of business, you didn't say anything about McDonnell Douglas in Long Beach.
Is that like is Raytheon really big there?
Well, Raytheon, Lee, Massachusetts is where Raytheon's headquarters is. McDonnell Douglas, back in the day before they went out of business, uh, they made classic planes like the DC-3. They were headquartered in Long Beach. They were a huge, huge, huge employer in Southern California for many, many years.
Gotcha. Yeah.
There were
I
lots
was
of there were lots of other aviation companies around Los Angeles in general, that only existed because McDonnell Douglas was in Long Beach. And when McDonnell Douglas fell to the series of defense mergers that ended it, most of those aviation businesses around Los Angeles just went away.
That's
it's how capitalism works. They were only there because they were there to provide contracted services to McDonnell Douglas or to sell intellectual property to McDonnell Douglas. And when McDonnell Douglas wasn't there anymore, they had no customer.
Oh yeah, it's really sad when companies will kind of capture an area, a town, or they'll build one. The company towns that are apparently trying to make a comeback, and then either their business shuts down or they move on to somewhere else, and they just leave it behind.
McDonnell Douglas was the number 2 civil aviation manufacturer after Boeing. And for a time, they were the number 1 federal aviation contractor. And so they had legitimate reasons to need lots of other sort of satellite aviation companies around.
Mm-hmm.
So you had aviation engineers who sold them designs for planes or designs for plane parts. And you had components manufacturers who designed and manufactured specific parts. And you had various contractors who did work for them on site. But all that went away when McDonnell Douglas went away, because it wasn't even a capture. It was that the aviation industry around Los Angeles was dependent on business with McDonnell Douglas, because McDonnell Douglas was there. That aviation business would not have been there if McDonnell Douglas wasn't there.
Gotcha.
It's like there used to be a whole bunch of companies aviation companies in Seattle that were in Seattle because of Boeing, and a lot of them went out of business when Boeing moved its headquarters to Chicago.
Yeah, it's sad when certain areas get so dependent on something like that. I actually live in an area that's pretty much financially reliant on one company.
Not Disney, I hope.
No, I'm more north than that. Although Disney was, Florida's like beloved thing, and I think opinions shifted a little with DeSantis attacking them for like such a minute thing too.
There are good things to attack Disney for.
Yeah, exactly. Like whenever
they're one of the least environmentally conscious companies in the country. They treat their employees horrifically. And of course, they have a history of institutional Nazism.
Oh yeah, and that was like the frustrating thing when I was like talking to my parents about it the other day. Is I was talking about how horrible DeSantis is with like the way he his the way he'll punish those that speak out against him. And I was talking about the Disney thing, and then they started talking about how bad Disney was. And I was like, no. Make no mistake, I don't care about their special district or whatever. Like, I care because a politician is punishing people that speak out against them.
Yeah.
And
and that really makes a difference. But it also matters because how bad does somebody have to be if they consider Disney woke?
Right. All Disney said was they were against the Don't Say Gay bill, and that was literally because Disney's own employees were like harassing them to say so.
I had not heard this story. I still love the story about Harlan Ellison getting fired from Disney because of a porn joke in the lunch line next to Walt. Now, I can see Harlan Ellison doing that. I can't see Disney ever hiring Harlan Ellison in the first place unless they didn't know who he was. My favorite Harlan Ellison story is still Harlan Ellison trying to sue to get his name taken off of his episode of Star Trek because he didn't like the way Gene Roddenberry and his people rewrote it.
I actually don't know who that is. Sorry.
Science fiction writer.
I,
The most famous thing Harlan Ellison wrote. Well, the two most famous things Harlan Ellison wrote are an episode of Star Trek and a story called A Boy and His Dog that was made into a movie. And it's real. A Boy and His Dog is really a gruesome book.
and sounds
And
like
the
a story where the
movie,
dog dies.
no.
Oh.
It's actually worse than the stories when the dog dies. They managed to make it that someone managed to write a story about a boy and a dog that is worse than the stories where the dog dies.
That's impressive.
It really is.
Because, oh my goodness.
The one good thing that you can say about that story is that the dog doesn't die. I think that might be the only good thing that you can say about that story.
What I want, a telepathic dog that gets me chicks. I don't think the dog needs to be telepathic to get you chicks.
Oh, the dog is telepathic and talks to the boy.
Ah, okay.
And the dog is very much an animal rather than a person. And I don't want to talk too much about the story because I'll start getting mad, but I'll also ruin it for anybody who hasn't read it and doesn't like spoilers. So stop, Connor.
He's over there sleeping.
Yeah, I have cats myself.
I have a cat as well. I don't think she's in here though. I like cats and dogs. I don't pick a side.
That's fair. I like dogs. I just have cats right now. Every now and then my wife says we should get a dog. And, I'm not against that in theory, but we live in an apartment and we already have two cats. What was that?
I said, I had no idea you had a wife.
Talk about her from time to time.
What is the best socialist organization? Oh, I don't know, honestly. That's a big question.
I think the problem is that we should have our socialist organizations talk to each other more and argue less about which one is best.
Yeah. I know probably the biggest one's DSA, but that's about all I know.
But are they socialist? But are they socialist?
Yeah, that's a different question. Like I said, the whole name Democratic Socialist kind of implies that the other socialists are not.
That's sort of part of the problem.
Yeah. So, but do you know
the history of the term Democratic Socialist?
Wasn't it like a way to I read about the history about it once. A guy came up with it to get into the Democratic Party, or I don't know.
No, not exactly. That's what they ended up deciding to do. But so there was the Socialist Party of America. And during World War II, the Socialist Party of America shrunk because while they supported the war with Japan after Pearl Harbor, they had been very active in the peace movement before the war. And some of their associations with people who turned out to be pretty pro-Nazi during the war as part of the peace movement came back to bite them.
Oof.
And the Depression era leader of the Socialist Party, Norman Thomas, later said that he wished he had not been so closely involved with the peace movement because he hadn't understood how co-opted it was by Nazis.
This feels like very reminiscent of that rally lately. But anyways.
Yes, it does. That's one of the reasons I brought it up, because it's really important to understand that the two primary anti-war groups coming into World War II in the United States were socialists who were against war for good socialist reasons, and Nazis who were against fighting other Nazis.
Yeah, that's history really does repeat, huh?
And the socialists the Socialist Party made the mistake of participating in America First rallies with more pro-Nazi groups, and that ended up really biting them during World War II and after. And of course, the Red Scare didn't help either.
Oh god, yeah.
So the Socialist Party ended up being run by A. Philip Randolph, who is famous for the Pullman strike, and a European academic named Max Schachtman, who was a Trotskyist and who had been close to Trotsky and had been part of the founding of the Socialist Workers' Party, but had broken off from the Socialist Workers' Party to found his own group, and had ended up associated with the Socialist Party primarily because that was the party his group had joined most recently. And then because of a leadership deficit, he ended up as one of the people running it. And the people who founded groups like Social Democrats USA and Democratic Socialists of America were disciples, if you like, of Randolph and Schachtman, who were trying to work in a system where there wasn't a Socialist Party of America, and the Communist Party was the target of McCarthyism, and was also considered suspicious because of its association with a foreign government by some American socialists.
Isn't it illegal to run as a communist in the U.S. too?
Technically, and there are all sorts of laws that allow people to be fired for being a communist that are still on the books. A lot of those aren't enforced. The Communist Party ran presidential candidates fairly consistently for a little while during the 1950s.
Yeah, there's
they were the first party to run a black man for either vice president or president.
There's a club locally, and I don't know a lot about it, but I do know if you apply to it, one of the questions is, "Are you a communist?" And not in a friendly manner.
No, if you say yes, that's an immediate no. You're out.
Yeah. CP Club in Florida. Oh, I don't know. I'm sure there's a CP USA branch here.
Probably. I mean, there usually is everywhere, but
what club? I'm not going to say the name of the club because I don't want to give away my precise location. But there's still a lot of anti-communism in Florida. In fact, DeSantis signed last year, I think, or schools are going to. It's mandatory once a year. Victims of Communism Day.
Ugh.
And it's every day for I think, or not every day, but every year. I don't remember the date is. And it's about the little black book number, the 100 million.
Yes. Which includes Nazis.
Which includes Nazis, which includes declining birth rates.
Yes. No, and let's remember, this is the most important part. Robert Conquest, the Western scholar most responsible for introducing the myth of the Holodomor into Western society and parlance, later said, once he had access to the Soviet records, "Oh, I was wrong. Never mind my whole book on this subject." And yet, despite the fact that they were writing after he had renounced his own work and said, "Never mind what I wrote," the people who wrote the Black Book of Communism still repeat his Holodomor myth about Ukraine uncritically, despite the fact that he himself has renounced it. And I know I keep saying this, but did I mention that he himself has renounced it?
That tracks, man. That really tracks. I'm just like, yeah, that sounds about right. Like I've
So
read
it
and
turns
watched.
out that the Holodomor was a Nazi grievance myth created by Alfred Rosenberg and basically handed to the West on a silver platter by the West's rescued Nazis in the West German security apparatus.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody believed this. And we're the Nazis are as bad as Hitler.
Oh my God.
The Nazis aren't as bad as Stalin.
I'm like looking at the bill again. It's November 7th is Victims of Communism Day.
Mm-hmm.
To include topics such as Mao Zedong and the Cultural Revolution Joseph Stalin and the Soviet system, Fidel Castro and the Cuban Revolution. Man, they're just talking about some cool people. Vladimir Lenin and the Russian Revolution.
Well, I mean, Castro is the only one of those people who admitted the things he got wrong and promised to do better.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a great admiration for Castro on that point. I mean, how many people have actually taken responsibility for what they've done wrong and promised to do better?
Yeah, no, it's like I've seen a lot of people point out negative things that Castro did like earlier on, and it'll be stuff that he like owned up to and tried to like fix, but they're like, nope.
Well, so the biggest complaint about Castro is, well, he took my land. Well, what was your family doing on its land? Well, we owned a farm. What did you grow on your farm? Sugar. And how did you pay your employees? Well, my grandparents said they used the government's work permit system. So you're mad Castro took your family's slaves away.
It's just it's unfair. It's unfair.
I cannot help but belabor the fact that people are just upset still that Castro took people's slaves away.
Well, a lot of people don't even know because, yeah, they, like there's so much propaganda around it. Like I'm re-looking at this bill again, and it does state the 100 million people who have fallen victim to communist regimes across the world, which shall be suitably observed by public exercise of state capital and elsewhere, as the governor may designate. And that, talks so negatively about Cuba, especially here in Florida, because,
What's
a
next?
lot.
Captive Nations Day?
Huh?
What's next? Captive Nations Day?
Right. He also did add a I guess to counterbalance, but really I think it's to appease people like APAC. He did add a Holocaust week as well.
Well, he's got to be careful about not offending the rich Republicans in Miami Beach.
Oh yeah. So yeah, he'll have something like the Victims of Communism Day, but then yeah, he'll also have like Holocaust Remembrance Week, which was part of that Stop Woke Act, which um everyone really fixated on the line about like you can't make white people feel guilty or whatever, which that's not what it said. It says you can't make people feel guilty based off their their
Yeah.
race.
But
And
we know what that means,
oh
because they're
yeah,
not going to
obviously.
enforce that against white people making black people feel bad.
Exactly. And it it had so much more in it as well. Like it was pro very nationalistic in a way.
Yes, yes.
Um
Well,
and pro
it's
imperialist.
yeah. Well, this is the whole thing. They don't want to teach the real U.S. history. They want to teach the American exceptionalist myth.
Oh yeah, it's that's very apparent in the bill regarding public universities that's going through right now. That
Yeah.
they're in DeSantis or the state government, because I know I can't blame everything on him. It's just really easy. But it's the state government as a whole. They're pushing through a bill regarding higher education right now, where they're funding these new colleges within universities that like the one in UF, it's called like the so sort of basically like a civics kind of thing, and it's basically just nationalism. Like they are inserting like these nationalist schools within the universities.
Oh, and that's gross.
Yeah. Then the one that's in UF, I can't remember the name of it at the moment, but it was funded by it basically got like $3 million worth of funding last year, and they don't really know from who.
Oh, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, like who
Now,
wants to fund the civics education college?
now we're getting to where we should probably wrap for the evening. Do you have anything you would like to promote?
um, I'm fairly active on Twitter at that handle, and I have a YouTube and Twitch with the same one. So anybody's
I saw you. I saw you say you were starting a YouTube channel. So yeah, give her, check her out.
yeah, I've had it for like maybe a week now, but haven't really done much with it. I also have a Twitch channel, but
It,
I
it was a
might
little
start
while.
streaming more.
It was a little while before I started doing anything with this, but when I did, I got serious.
Yeah, yeah, hoping to engage with people more because honestly, I just really like talking about this kind of stuff,
Sure.
and I kind of want more and more people to know about it, especially like yeah, these like smaller things people don't hear about as often.
I really appreciate you coming on the show, so I want to thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and I've
Totally
enjoyed
my
the chat
pleasure.
as well. Thank y'all for sticking around.
I've been having a good time. I would go longer, but there's a couple things I have to take care of tonight.
I
Um,
understand. It's I'm on the East Coast, so yeah,
I'm
it's nearing
also
eleven
conscious of
thirty.
how much later it is for you.
I'm a late night person, but yeah.
Fair enough. Well, you have a great night. And folks, thanks for watching. You have a great night too. And we'll tweet at you.
Bye.